As Eugene Sledge's company fought through the grueling Peleliu campaign, they began to wonder if any of them would walk away.
The 1st Regiment under Colonel Chesty Puller had lost terribly because their first assignment was the ridges, and he just kept them attacking the ridges, and we were tied in with them. I knew a lot of those guys had gone through boot camp with them, or infantry training, and some of them were telling me, you know, hell, Sledgehammer, he's going to get us all killed. I mean, we are attacking ridges with bayonets. We can't even see where the fire is coming from.
The death of K Company's popular company commander, Captain Andrew Ack Haldane, devastated Sledge. He remembered it in his book years later. "The skipper is dead. Ack has been killed. I was stunned and sickened. I turned away from the others, sat on my helmet and sobbed quietly. I assumed Ack was immortal. He was the finest Marine officer I ever knew. The loss of our company commander at Peleliu was like losing a parent we depended on for security." Some of the men threw their gear violently to the deck. Everybody was cursing and rubbing his eyes. It was the worst grief I endured during the entire war. The intervening years have not lessened it any. After 74 days, the battle on Peleliu was over, but the damage was devastating to Sledge and his friends. This battle ended, but its cost would last forever. Company K, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, went into Peleliu with approximately 250 men. It suffered 64% casualties. Of its original 7 officers, 2 remained. Sledge would write in a quiet moment, "Something inside me died at Peleliu." Perhaps it was a childish innocence that accepted as faith the claim that man is basically good.
Something horrible happened there. It's where my father became a man.
More than once they called him in and said, "We think you would make a good officer. Would you like to apply for a commission?" And he said no. And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, number one, I could never order my men into what I went through. And number two, I'm not going to leave my buddies. I'm not going to leave my buddies in K Company."
Barely 5 months later, Rifleman Sledge was in an amphibious assault fleet steaming into an island battle that would prove even longer and deadlier than Peleliu.
Well, the night before D-Day at Okinawa, they sent the word around and said that we could probably expect 80 to 85% casualties in the infantry unit on the beach. And of course, that was certainly not something that was conducive to sound sleep.
Sledge later wrote, "A pre-dawn reveille ushered in Easter Sunday, April Fool's Day, 1945. We had chow of steak and eggs, the usual feast before the slaughter." Eerily, the Japanese barely opposed the landing on Okinawa. But Sledge and the veteran Old Breed knew that this only meant that they were concentrating a special kind of hell on ground of their own choosing. Sledge would write, "Pine trees grew everywhere. I had forgotten what a delicious odor the needles gave off. We also saw Easter lilies blooming." But Sledge was under no illusions about where he was going.
At night, you could see the flashes of the artillery down there, and you hear the booming of the guns. It almost sounded like thunderstorms, and you tried to make yourself believe it was, but you knew it wasn't. The Japs had twice as much artillery as they typically would have. The troops on the line got a double dose of heavy artillery. Being fired at by artillery was the closest thing to hell I ever experienced. I thought, oh my God, here we go again, right into this meat grinder again, and how the hell is anybody gonna get out of it? But there was one different factor in my own mind, and that was, as terrified as I was, I knew I wasn't gonna panic, because I had survived Peleliu and learned no matter how bad my fear was, I had learned I could control it. We ran forward into these positions and they were firing at us, and it was just one eruption of explosions after the other in that concentrated area that we had to move into. And I don't know how many soldiers I saw get killed as they tried to move out.
Into this deluge of artillery fire came the Old Breed Marines to relieve a shot-up Army division being pulled out of the line.
The advantage of the 60mm mortars was that we could be right with the riflemen and we could drop the shells no more than, say, 25 or 30 yards ahead of them. My mortar section never had a short round. We never caused a casualty. We were always proud of that.
Even in the business of dealing death, there were craftsmen. And a lot of Eugene Sledge's buddies got back alive because he cared enough to make himself one of the best. He was only 20 years old. The Okinawa battle added new torments for Eugene Sledge and the Old Breed. The dry, choking dust of the last campaign was replaced by drenching downpours and seas of mud. A wet, numbing cold that went straight through the men supplanted the blowtorch heat of the equatorial sun.
And with rain and 50-degree temperature, for anybody is miserable, but for men who had been in the Pacific tropics previously for about 2 years, it was just, we just shivered until our teeth rattled.
But no matter how debilitating the day's battle, Sledge's old habit of making diary notes in the margins of his Bible never faded. He might have begun to sense his future mission. As at Peleliu, Japanese nighttime infiltrators turned desperately needed sleep into a half-awake nightmare of terrified readiness. Sleeping on hair-trigger alert would never be unlearned.
One time, Sledge was visited by an old K Company buddy who warned his wife, Jean, don't ever shake him to wake him up. Because if you shook him, he'd be back in the foxhole and would be a Japanese coming in with a knife and he'd come at you. And she'd say, well, if I've got to wake him up, what should I do?
And he had told me that the way they woke each other up in their foxholes, they would lean over and put their lips against your ear and whisper your name. And so I thought I would try that one time, and I leaned over when he was sleeping and said very quietly, "Sledgehammer." And he was immediately wide awake.